The last words my grandfather left me were not gentle advice, but a cryptic sentence that echoed in my mind long after his passing. Take our family photo back home. It is your legacy. At first, I thought he simply wanted me to keep a sentimental keepsake. But when I finally pulled that frame from the wall, what I discovered hidden behind it froze me to the core. My name is Gabriel Hano, and I was 25 years old when this story truly began. I was born and raised in Kearney, Nebraska, a small town with endless cornfields and dusty red roads that stretched into the horizon whenever the wind blew strong. To outsiders, Kearney might sound poetic, but my childhood was far from it. It was not golden harvests or small-town charm that defined me, but long, lonely days and emotional wounds that never healed. On the surface, my family was respected and well off. My father, Reed Hannett, dressed in sharp suits and carried himself like a man who owned the town. He was a real estate businessman, always flashing his wealth with gold watches and sunglasses, even when the sun wasn't out. My mother, whom I was forced to call Mom despite never feeling warmth from her, was sharp-witted and busy with women's club parties. Then there were my siblings Monica and Marcus, both older, both strangers under the same roof. Monica, 7 years older, was beautiful and haughty, her disdain for me plain in every word. Marcus, 5 years older, was burly and cruel, using fists and laughter to remind me that I didn't belong. From the beginning, I was branded the bastard child. Reed spit those words at me whenever his temper boiled, and soon enough they became the quiet truth that shaped my days. I still remember Monica sneering when I broke one of my mother's glasses. "You're a burden. This house would be so much more peaceful without you." Marcus was even more direct, shoving me down the stairs one afternoon and laughing as he called me a bastard who didn't deserve to be there. My parents never stopped them. In fact, their silence was worse than the cruelty of my siblings. No hugs, no questions about my day at school, no warmth, only cold threats. "If you don't behave, I'll send you to an orphanage," my father growled once, pointing his finger into my face. My mother watched from across the room, her eyes glacial, not a word of protest on her lips. I learned to lower my head to swallow my tears and to become invisible. Silence became my only shield, though it did little to dull the sting of rejection. One night when I was 8, Monica and Marcus locked me in the basement for daring to take a cookie from her jar. They left me huddled in darkness, crying and pounding on the door while they giggled on the other side. "Stay down there and make friends with the rats," Marcus jeered before walking away. I spent that entire night curled up on the cold concrete trying to convince myself it would be okay. When morning came, my mother opened the door, looked down at me and simply said, "Don't make your siblings angry next time." There was no embrace, no concern, just another reminder that I meant nothing in her eyes. That moment stayed with me like a scar carved into my soul. But not everything was darkness. In the storm of cruelty, I had a refuge, my grandparents. Their small wooden house stood on the outskirts of Kearney, surrounded by a garden full of daisies and an old swing that creaked when I sat on it. Every weekend I found ways to escape my house to be with them. There, for the first time, I felt human. My grandfather was tall and stern, his silver hair shining under the sun. A former farmer turned businessman, he carried himself with quiet strength. He wasn't one for sweet words, but he was fair and steady. He taught me how to tie my shoes, how to hold a hoe in the garden, and most importantly, how to stand tall. A person can lose everything, he told me, once his deep voice echoing in my chest, but never their self-respect. Those words became my compass. My grandmother was gentle like a summer breeze. Her hands, calloused from gardening, always smelled faintly of flower and daisies. She pulled me into her arms each time I arrived, sat me at the kitchen table, and placed warm cookies in front of me. She was the only one who ever asked, "How's your day, Gabriel?" A simple question, yet it broke something inside me every time, because I wanted to cry and confess everything. But I never did. My father had warned me with a glare colder than ice. Don't ever open your mouth about what happens in this house, Gabriel. If you do, you'll regret it. I was terrified of losing my refuge, so I kept silent. Somehow my grandparents still understood. They never pressed me, but their eyes spoke volumes of concern and love. Those days with them were my light. Running through the garden, listening to Grandpa's stories, helping Grandma weed the flower beds, I wanted to live there forever. But when I turned 12, Reed began controlling my visits. They're old. Let them be, he said with irritation. Though I knew the real reason. He didn't want me too close, didn't want secrets slipping through. My visits became rare stolen moments of happiness I cherished. And as I grew older, I feared the day my safe haven might disappear altogether. I never imagined how soon that day would come, nor how it would shatter everything I thought I knew about my family, my past, and myself. I was 23 when the call came that changed everything. I just graduated with a degree in architecture and was sketching late into the night in my small rented room in Lincoln when my phone rang. My grandmother's voice trembled through the line, frail and broken. Gabriel, your grandfather. He's not well. Can you come right away? My pencil fell from my hand, and before I could think, I grabbed my jacket and ran out the door. The bus ride to Kearney felt endless. 3 hours of staring out the window, my hands clenched, my mind racing with images of the man who once lifted me on his shoulders, who taught me to stand tall, now lying helpless in a hospital bed. I prayed silently, begging for strength for just one more chance to tell him I loved him. When I arrived, dusk had fallen. The antiseptic sting in the air and the low hum of machines made my chest tighten. My grandmother sat outside his room, her hands clasped and trembling, her eyes swollen from tears. She stood when she saw me hugging me, as though I were her only lifeline. Gabriel, you're here, she whispered. I asked how he was, though my voice cracked with dread. She could barely say the words. The doctor. Lung cancer. Final stage. They've done all they could. It felt like the ground crumbled beneath me. I stepped into his room and barely recognized the man on the bed. His skin was pale, his frame thin silver hair clinging to his forehead. Yet when his eyes met mine, they lit up faint, but still carrying that same strength. He reached out his trembling hand, and I clutched it like a child again. Gabriel, you're here. I knelt beside him, my tears spilling freely. Grandpa, I'm right here. For the next 6 months, I lived at the hospital. I took leave from my internship and returned to Kearney, trading my future plans for the only duty that mattered, being at his side. I spoon-fed him porridge, helped him sit up, held his hand through endless nights, and listened to stories I already knew by heart. He told me about his youth, about the fortune he built from nothing, and the dreams he had for the family. Each word seemed to cost him great effort, but he spoke anyway, as though determined to leave behind more than just memories. My grandmother and I worked in shifts, her love etched in every weary glance, her strength somehow holding both of us together. My parents came, but only to keep up appearances. My father stood stiff in his expensive suits, asking a few perfunctory questions before rushing away to his busy schedule. My mother brought extravagant bouquets, but spent most visits scrolling through her phone. Monica and Marcus were worse, whispering in corners about the estate, speculating over who would inherit what. Their greed sickened me. I wanted to throw them out, to scream that Grandpa deserved better, but I stayed silent, because I knew he wouldn't want discord. He simply squeezed my hand, telling me in silence that he understood. One afternoon, sunlight streamed through the hospital window, casting long shadows across his bed. Grandpa called me close his eyes sharp despite his frailty. Gabriel, he said slowly, when I'm gone, take the photo of you, me, and Grandma home. That's the legacy I want to leave you. I froze, confused. I knew the photo well, the one hanging in their living room, of the three of us smiling brightly when I was 5. It was one of my happiest memories, but Why call it a legacy, I wanted to ask, but his eyes told me not to, so I nodded, squeezing his hand. Yes, Grandpa, I promise. Those months were a storm of hope and despair. Some days he laughed telling Grandma the story of how he tricked her into marrying him. Other days he was too weak to open his eyes. I prayed endlessly, bargaining with fate for more time. But time ran out. One morning the doctor called me aside, his face grave. It's only a matter of days now. I returned to his room, my knees weak, and knelt beside his bed. His eyes opened and he smiled faintly. Gabriel, you are my pride. Those were the last words he ever spoke to me. 2 days later he passed away quietly without drama, leaving behind a silence heavier than any noise. I sat at his side, holding his hand until it grew cold. My grandmother and I cried together, two souls hollowed by grief, while the world outside carried on as if nothing had changed. His funeral was simple, just as he had wished. Only family and a handful of close friends gathered. My father wore his expensive black suit, stern-faced but dry-eyed. My mother, impeccable as always, hid behind dark sunglasses. Monica and Marcus were restless, their eyes darting as if calculating their share of the estate. I stood beside Grandma, holding her trembling hand, disgust boiling in me at their shallow presence. I realized then that Grandpa's cryptic words about the photo weren't just about memories. He had left me something that would soon unravel secrets I was unprepared to face. After the funeral, I returned to my apartment in Kearney and tried to resume life, but every night I lay awake replaying Grandpa's final words. Why had he called that photo my legacy? It was just a picture, wasn't it? The question gnawed at me until one morning the phone rang. It was Grandpa's lawyer, Harold Grayson, a calm-voiced older man. Gabriel, he said, you need to be at my office this Friday. We'll be reading your grandfather's will. My stomach tightened. I had never thought about inheritances or estates. To me, Grandpa had been the man who taught me about integrity, not about money. But I knew from my father, Monica, and Marcus, this would be the moment they had been waiting for. On Friday, I put on my cleanest shirt and walked into Grayson's office, a small room lined with shelves of thick legal books. My grandmother was there, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. My parents, Monica and Marcus, sat stiffly, the air so tense it felt like a storm about to break. My father's eyes were cold and calculating. My mother's lips burst, Monica and Marcus whispering to each other with greedy anticipation. Mr. Grayson entered carrying a stack of papers, adjusted his glasses, and began. He listed Grandpa's estate shares in real estate companies, large plots of land across Nebraska, and neighboring state stocks in major firms, and a substantial amount of cash. Altogether, more than $15 million. I sat stunned, realizing the fortune was far greater than I had ever imagined. My father smirked. My mother's eyes gleamed, and Monica and Marcus exchanged victorious looks. Only Grandma and I remained silent. Then Grayson read the terms. Per this will the entire estate is transferred to his son, Mr. Reed Hannott. The room erupted. My father laughed triumphantly, slamming his hand on the table. That's my father, he crowed. My mother smiled for the first time that day. Monica even clapped, whispering to Marcus like they had already won. A strange pain rose in my chest, not jealousy, but disgust. They treated his death as if it were a game of winnings. My father turned to me afterward, his sneer sharp. Don't get any ideas, Gabriel. You're not getting a cent. Monica and Marcus will inherit through me. But you, a bastard, doesn't deserve anything. His words stabbed like knives. But I forced myself to stand tall, remembering Grandpa's lessons. Grandma's gaze caught mine, filled with meaning I didn't yet understand. That night back in my apartment, his insult echoed in my ears. Bastard. I had heard it my whole life, but this time it stung deeper. And then it hit me like lightning. The photo. Grandpa's legacy. Why had he emphasized it? I could no longer ignore it. The next morning I drove to my grandparents' house. The small wooden home felt heavy without his presence, but it still smelled faintly of Grandma's cookies. She sat at the kitchen table, her frail hands clutching a teacup. When she saw me, her eyes filled with worry and love. "Gabriel," she said softly, "you're here." I hugged her, then whispered, "Grandma, I need the photo, the one Grandpa told me about." She nodded slowly as if expecting this. "It's in the living room. You know where." Her eyes carried something secret, but she said nothing more. I walked into the living room where the photo still hung above the fireplace, me at 5 years old, standing between Grandpa and Grandma, all three of us smiling. I carefully lifted the frame, my heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. And then I saw it. On the back, taped securely, was a thick envelope with my name written in Grandpa's firm handwriting. My breath caught. I peeled it off with trembling hands and opened it. Inside were 3 items: a folded letter, a notarized document, and a photograph. I picked up the photo first and nearly dropped it. It showed me as a baby, maybe 6 months old, cradled in the arms of a young man I didn't recognize. He had dark hair, bright eyes, and a radiant smile, the same eyes I saw in the mirror every morning. My pulse raced as I turned to Grandma, my voice shaking. Who is this?" She stepped closer, laid her trembling hand on my shoulder, and whispered, "Open the letter, Gabriel. Your grandfather wanted you to know the truth." My hands shook so badly I could barely unfold it. Grandpa's familiar handwriting filled the page. "If you are reading this, Gabriel, it means I'm gone. But you deserve to know the truth. You are not Reed's son. You are the son of Jonathan Reed's younger brother, my youngest son. Jonathan died when you were still a baby. I was wrong to disown him, and it is my greatest regret. You are his legacy, and I must make it right." The words blurred as my tears fell into the page. Jonathan, my real father. My world spun as if the floor were collapsing. I looked again at the young man in the photo and felt both pain and longing. I turned to Grandma, my voice breaking. Why didn't anyone tell me? Her eyes filled with tears as she held my hand. "We wanted to protect you, Gabriel. Reed agreed to raise you after Jonathan died. Your grandfather carried guilt so heavy he could barely bear it. He thought hiding the truth would shield you, but in the end, it only caused you more pain." I sank into the chair, clutching the photo to my chest. For 25 years, I had lived believing I was unwanted, a burden. Now I knew the truth. I was Jonathan's son, not Reed's, and Grandpa had left me not just the truth, but a way to claim what was rightfully mine. The second document confirmed it, a new will duly notarized, dated months after the first. In it, Grandpa left 90% of his $15 million estate to me, with only a small portion for Reed. My tears fell freely, not for the money, but for the father I never knew, and for the man who tried to make things right before it was too late. I sat there stunned, the weight of the discovery pressing on my chest until it was hard to breathe. The photo of Jonathan holding me as a baby trembled in my hands, his bright smile so full of warmth that I could almost feel it across time. My real father. A man I had never known, erased from my life before I was old enough to understand. My tears blurred the image as I whispered, "Why, Grandma? Why didn't Grandpa tell me himself?" She stroked my hair with trembling fingers, just as she had when I was a child. "He was afraid, Gabriel. Afraid of breaking you with the truth, afraid of facing his own mistakes. When he disowned Jonathan for refusing an arranged marriage, it was his pride that destroyed their bond. And when Jonathan died, the guilt consumed him. Every time he looked at you, he saw Jonathan. Admitting the truth meant admitting he had lost his son forever because of his stubbornness." Her voice faltered, but she continued. "But make no mistake, Gabriel, he loved you. You were his second chance, his way of holding on to Jonathan. That letter, this photo. It was his way of finally making amends." I read on in the letter, my grandfather's words, heavy with both regret and determination. He explained that in the original will, he had left everything to Reed with the condition that Reed share half with me. But in his final months, he realized Reed would never honor it. So he drafted a second will, leaving nearly the entire estate to me. His words rang in my head, "Stand up and claim what is rightfully yours. The greedy do not deserve what I leave behind." My hands shook as I folded the papers, my heart pounding with both fear and resolve. For the first time in my life, I had proof that I was not what Reed had always called me. I was not a bastard. I was Jonathan's son, William's grandson, and I had been chosen to carry their legacy forward. The storm inside me raged for days. My mind replayed Grandma's voice as she described my father, Jonathan, kind, stubborn, full of life. He had fallen in love with a girl named Emily, my mother, a woman of no wealth or social standing. Their love had been genuine, but forbidden in my grandfather's eyes. Disowned, Jonathan built a modest life with her, only for fate to steal him away in a highway accident when I was 6 months old. Emily, shattered and alone, gave me to Reed in desperation, hoping I would have a home. Then she vanished, leaving no trace. I sat there with tears soaking the photographed mourning parents I never got to know. My heart ached with a deeper loss than I had ever felt before, yet alongside the pain, there was relief. For the first time, I understood why I had never belonged in Reed's house. It wasn't my fault. It had never been my fault. But I also knew what Grandpa's final act meant. A battle was coming. Reed, Monica, and Marcus would never let $15 million slip from their grasp without a fight. That night, I sat across from Grandma in her quiet kitchen, clutching the will and letter. "Grandma," I said, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest, "I'll do what Grandpa wanted. I'll claim what's rightfully mine." She looked at me with eyes that brimmed with both pride and fear. "I know you will, Gabriel. But you must be careful. Reed is not a man who accepts defeat. Your grandfather foresaw this, that's why he hid the will. You must be strong like Jonathan, like yourself." The next step was clear. I needed the truth to be recognized legally. With Grandma's support, I contacted Mr. Grayson. When I met him in his office, I placed the letter and the new will on his desk. His eyes widened as he examined the documents. "Gabriel," he said, his voice heavy, "this changes everything. This will is valid and supersedes the first, but you must be prepared. Reed will contest it. He has the resources and the ruthlessness to drag this into court." I took a deep breath, feeling the fire in my chest. I'm ready. I owe it to Grandpa, to my father, and to myself. A family meeting was arranged at Mr. Grayson's office, the same place where the false will had been read. I arrived early, clutching the envelope to my chest, Grandma by my side. My heart pounded as the door opened. Reed walked in his presence like a dark cloud. My mother followed, cold and expressionless, Monica sneering as always, Marcus glaring as if he were ready for a fight. Mr. Grayson cleared his throat. "We're here today to discuss an important matter regarding the will of Mr. William Hannott. Gabriel has brought forward a new document, and I ask that everyone listen carefully." Reed leaned back in his chair, smirking. What nonsense is this now? I thought everything was settled. My palms were damp, but I stood clutching the envelope. "It's not settled," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "Grandpa left a new will, and I want everyone to know the truth." The room erupted. Reed shot to his feet, his face red with fury. "What? A new will? You're making this up, you bastard." The word hit like it always had, but this time I did not bow my head. I met his eyes and said calmly, "That's right. I'm not your son. I'm Jonathan's. And Grandpa left 90% of the estate to me." Gasps filled the room as I placed the will and letter on the table. Mr. Grayson examined them carefully, then looked up. "This document is legitimate, notarized, and dated after the previous will. By law, it takes precedence." The air turned electric. Reed lunged forward, shouting it was a forgery. Monica shrieked that I was a liar. Marcus clenched his fists as if ready to strike me, but I stood my ground. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the powerless boy they had tormented. I was Jonathan's son, William's chosen heir, and I would not back down. The room descended into chaos, their voices colliding like thunder. Monica screeched that I was a thief trying to steal what wasn't mine. Marcus stepped closer with fists clenched, and my father's face burned crimson as he waved the will in the air. "This is a forgery," he roared. "You think you can fool me, Gabriel? You're nothing but a nobody with no claim to this family." His words hit me like they always had, but for the first time, I refused to flinch. "I am Jonathan's son," I said evenly. "And this was Grandpa's true wish. If you don't believe me, read his letter." I slid the handwritten page across the table, but Reed only glanced at it before tossing it aside with contempt. "A pathetic trick," he spat. "Harold, you can't honestly believe this." Mr. Grayson adjusted his glasses calmly. "This will was notarized and witnessed. It is completely legal. If you want to contest it, Reed, you may take it to court. But under the law, this will stands." Reed's eyes burned into mine, a storm of hatred flashing in their depths. "You'll regret this, Gabriel. You think you can take me on, I'll destroy you. You won't see a cent." My mother finally spoke, her voice like ice. "You should stop before this goes too far. You don't belong to this family." I looked at her, the woman I once called Mom, and something inside me hardened. "You're right," I said quietly. "I never belonged, but I'm Jonathan's son, Grandpa's grandson, and I won't let him down." Monica let out a sharp laugh. "Listen to him," she sneered. "He thinks he's some kind of hero." Marcus growled, stepping closer. "You want a war, Gabriel. You'll lose everything." The tension was about to snap when Grandma, silent until then, suddenly rose. Though frail, her voice cut through the room like a blade. "Enough, Reed, Monica, Marcus, you should be ashamed. William chose Gabriel because he knew you cared only for money. Gabriel cared for him for his memory. That's why William trusted him. If you want to sue, go ahead. But the truth will not change." Her words silenced them, if only for a moment. Reed's jaw clenched, his chest heaving. "This isn't over," he snarled. "I'll see you in court." They stormed out, leaving the room heavy with silence. I collapsed back into my chair, drained but burning with determination. Grandma gripped my hand. "You did the right thing," she whispered, "but be prepared. Reed won't stop easily." Her words haunted me in the days that followed. Every knock at the door, every phone call from an unknown number sent shivers down my spine. Reed's threat echoed in my head, "I'll destroy you." I became cautious, entrusting the originals of the will and letter to Mr. Grayson's office safe, while I carried only certified copies. The photo of my father I kept in my wallet, a talisman, reminding me that I wasn't fighting for money, but for truth and love. The attacks came swiftly. Reporters began calling, parroting rumors that I had forged the will to steal the fortune. Tabloid headlines painted me as an opportunist, the bastard child trying to snatch an inheritance that wasn't mine. Some articles smeared Grandpa, too, suggesting he had been manipulated in his weakened state. Each lie was a knife to my heart. Then one evening I returned home to find my apartment broken into drawers, overturned, the small safe in my bedroom cracked open. Nothing important had been kept there, but the violation left me shaken. The police filed a report, but I knew who was behind it. Reed and his children were searching for the new will, desperate to erase it before it could reach the court. I began sleeping restlessly, waking at every sound. The sense of being hunted never left me, yet not everyone believed the lies. Old neighbors of my grandparents spoke up in interviews recounting how Reed had always treated me coldly, while Grandpa and Grandma sheltered me with love. One friend of Grandpa's told the local paper, William Hannett was not someone who could be manipulated. If he left his estate to Gabriel, he had a damn good reason. Those words buoyed me, though I knew the real battle lay ahead. Reed hired one of the most infamous attorneys in Omaha, Victor Crane, known as the Will Destroyer. Their team filed a lawsuit claiming Grandpa had been of unsound mind and that I had coerced him. The accusations were cruel, but unsurprising. I had seen the greed in Reed's eyes. He would rather scorch the earth than surrender. Mr. Grayson and I worked tirelessly to prepare. We gathered Grandpa's medical records proving he had been lucid testimony from the notary and 2 witnesses and statements from doctors who had seen him clear-minded during his final months. Grandma agreed to testify her frail frame, masking a core of iron. William knew exactly what he was doing, she told me. He loved you and wanted to right his wrongs. I will swear it before any judge. Her words gave me strength. I also confided in Ethan, a loyal friend from college who offered to safeguard an extra certified copy of the will. Your family's a mess, Gabe, he said, shaking his head. But I've got your back. Whatever happens, you're not alone. The first court hearing felt like stepping into a gladiator's arena. Reed, Monica, and Marcus sat across from me, their eyes sharp and unyielding. Victor Crane rose, his voice smooth but menacing. Your Honor, this so-called will is a fabrication. Mr. William Hannett was not of sound mind, and this young man, who is not even Reed's biological son, exploited his weakness to seize the estate. My fists clenched under the table, but Mr. Grayson's hand steadied me. He stood, his voice calm but firm. Your Honor, the evidence will show that William was fully lucid and deliberate in his final wishes. This will is no fabrication, it is the truth. The battle lines were drawn. I looked across the courtroom at Reed's cold eyes and felt the fire inside me burn brighter. I wasn't the powerless boy he had tormented all my life. I was Jonathan's son, and I was ready to fight. The hearings dragged on for weeks, each one a grueling test of strength. Reed's lawyer, Victor Crane, was relentless. He twisted questions to make me look manipulative, suggested Grandma and I had conspired, even implied the notary who signed the new will was bribed. Every accusation was a blade meant to cut away at the truth. But Mr. Grayson countered with steady precision, presenting medical records, the testimony of doctors who affirmed Grandpa's clear state of mind, and witnesses who stood by the legitimacy of the will. Each time Reed's team tried to paint me as an imposter, the evidence pushed back. When Grandma took the stand, I feared her age and frailty would make her vulnerable to Crane's venom, but she surprised them all. She stood tall, her voice clear, though her hands trembled. William knew what he was doing, she declared. He was fully aware, and he wanted to correct the mistakes of his past. He left nearly everything to Gabriel, not because he was confused, but because he trusted him. Gabriel is Jonathan's son, our grandson, and William loved him. Her words rang through the courtroom like a bell, silencing even Crane for a moment. I watched her with tears in my eyes, pride swelling in my chest. The final hearing was set, and everyone knew it would decide everything. I barely slept the night before lying awake with Grandpa's letter in my hands, reading his words over and over, stand up and claim what is rightfully yours. Never lose your self-respect. At dawn, I, dressed in my best suit, tucked the photograph of my father into my wallet and walked into the courthouse with Grandma at my side. Reed, Monica, and Marcus were already there, their faces tight with smug confidence as though victory was guaranteed. Victor Crane rose for his closing argument. His voice was smooth but sharp as he turned to the judge. Your Honor, we are dealing with an act of manipulation. This young man, who is not even a direct son of Reed Hannett, exploited William's weakened state to seize control of an estate worth more than $15 million. We request that the court declare the new will invalid and uphold the original. His words were venom dripping with contempt. Reed smirked, convinced the argument would secure his victory. Then Mr. Grayson stood. He spoke calmly, but his words carried weight. Your Honor, this case is not about greed, but about truth. Gabriel Hano is not merely a claimant, he is the son of Jonathan, the grandson of William, and the person William trusted to carry his legacy. The evidence shows William was lucid, deliberate, and determined to correct the wrongs of his past. This will is not the product of manipulation. It is the final wish of a man who loved his grandson. I felt my heart pounding as I asked permission to speak. The judge nodded. My hands trembled as I unfolded Grandpa's letter. Your Honor, I began, my voice shaking. My grandfather wrote these words to me before he passed. He wanted me to know who I was, to know the truth about my father, Jonathan. He regretted disowning his son, and he wanted to make things right. He wrote, "You are Jonathan's legacy. Stand tall, Gabriel. Don't let the greedy take what is not theirs." My voice broke as tears blurred the page. I'm not here for the money. I'm here because my grandfather wanted me to know I belonged, that I was loved. This letter is proof of his heart, and I can't let his final wish be erased. When I finished, the courtroom was silent. Grandma wept softly at my side. Even the judge's stern expression softened for a moment. Then she turned her gaze to Reed's table, where my father sat with a face like stone, his fists clenched. The judge deliberated briefly, then raised her gavel. Based on the evidence and testimonies, this court recognizes the will dated September 15th, 2024 as valid. The estate of William Hannott will be distributed accordingly. Gabriel Hano is entitled to 90% of the estate. Reed Hannott will receive 10%. The gavel struck and the sound echoed like thunder. For a moment I sat frozen, hardly believing the words. Then Grandma squeezed my hand, whispering through her tears, "You did it, Gabriel. You honored him." Relief washed over me in waves, though it was mixed with exhaustion so deep I could barely stand. Across the room, Reed exploded. He slammed the table and shouted, "This is a farce." Monica and Marcus sat pale and stunned, their smugness drained away. Reed glared at me with a hatred that could have burned through steel. "This isn't over," he hissed. "You'll pay for this." But his words no longer pierced me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid. I left the courtroom with Grandma's hand in mine. The weight that had hung over me since childhood seemed to lift with every step. I wasn't the bastard child anymore. I wasn't Reed's shame. I was Jonathan's son, William's grandson, and the rightful heir to their love and their legacy. The days after the verdict felt surreal. For the first time in 25 years, I could breathe without the weight of shame pressing down on me. The court hadn't just given me control of my grandfather's estate. It had given me something far more precious: recognition, dignity, and the truth about who I was. Reed, Monica, and Marcus didn't disappear quietly. They flooded my phone with threats and insults, left messages dripping with venom, and even tried to stir more rumors in the press. But their voices no longer had power over me. I blocked their numbers, closed the door on them, and reminded myself of Grandpa's words: stand tall, never lose your self-respect. With Mr. Grayson's guidance, I began the overwhelming process of taking control of the estate. It felt daunting at first, transferring real estate shares, overseeing properties across Nebraska and Iowa, and handling investments worth more than $15 million. But I refused to let the money define me the way it had consumed Reed. To me, this inheritance wasn't about wealth. It was about building something meaningful, something that would make both my grandfather and my father proud. I returned to my passion for architecture, the dream I had carried since college. With the resources Grandpa left me, I founded a small firm in Kearney Hano Designs. I started modestly hiring a handful of passionate young associates and working long hours to bring our first projects to life. Every design I sketched carried a piece of my past: the swing in Grandma's garden, the warmth of her kitchen, the dignity of Grandpa's strong hands. I wanted to create spaces that carried integrity, just as he had taught me. Grandma remained by my side through it all. I convinced her to leave the old wooden house and move in with me. At first, she resisted, saying she didn't want to be a burden, but I told her the truth. "Grandma, you're my real family." I want to take care of you the way you've always cared for me." She finally agreed, and watching her plant golden daisies in our new garden filled me with a joy I hadn't felt since childhood. One afternoon, sunlight spilled into the living room as I carefully hung 2 photos on the wall. The first was the picture Grandpa had called my legacy me at 5 years old between him and Grandma, all 3 of us smiling like the world had no shadows. Beside it, I placed the second Jonathan, my father, holding me as a baby, his eyes bright and proud. I stood silently before them, my chest tight, my eyes damp. They weren't just photos. They were proof of love that had always existed even when I hadn't known it, proof that I was never truly alone. I touched the photo of my father. "Dad," I whispered, "I never got to know you. But I promise to live a life worthy of your love." Then I turned to Grandpa's smiling face. "I did it, Grandpa. I stood tall just like you taught me. I won't let you down." In that moment, I felt both men with me, their pride surrounding me like armor. Grandma stepped into the room and placed her hand gently on my shoulder. Her eyes softened as she looked at the photos. "You're so much like Jonathan," she said quietly. "Strong, kind, and stubborn in the best way. He would be so proud of you. And so would William. You are their pride, Gabriel." Her words pierced me with warmth so deep I couldn't hold back my tears. I turned and hugged her, feeling the fragile strength of her arms, knowing she was the last living link to the love that had saved me. Life didn't suddenly become easy. The scars from Reed's cruelty, the years of loneliness, the emptiness of never knowing my mother, all of it remained. But those scars no longer defined me. Instead, they became reminders of what I had overcome. I had survived the storm not with bitterness, but with resilience. And in doing so, I discovered a truth more valuable than any inheritance. Love is stronger than blood, and integrity is stronger than greed. Standing in the garden one evening, I watched the daisies glow under the setting sun, their golden petals swaying in the breeze. For the first time, I wasn't looking back with regret or fear. I was looking forward with strength, with pride, with freedom. My name was no longer a burden whispered in contempt. I was Gabriel Hano, son of Jonathan, grandson of William, and I had finally found my place in the world. If my story touched you, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs strength, subscribe for more stories like this, and leave a comment about what this journey meant to you. Your voice matters.